We're live. Just
no.
like that. With episode 86. Assuming we have a route with limited amount of rabbit holes this time around, let's... All we really have to talk about is the...
let's blame him for that.
Yeah, right. So what? It's the... We got the... What do you want to... Let's talk about the Polaris rework first. I mean, why not, right? Because Polaris rework does look intriguing. I'm actually glad that we're seeing something of it.
I have one major issue with it, and it's not necessarily Polaris itself. It's actually quite a few ships, but I'm just curious, why do they keep insisting that the escape pods be up at like the bridge or the front of the craft, when it would make much more sense for them to be centralized, so it's like equal distance for everyone to get to?
Right, where like, essentially
where you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
because like in the Polaris right now, if you're a turret gunner in the tail end or an engineer in the back, yeah, you've got to run all the way across the ship to get to the emergency escape pod.
Honestly, escape pods, at least to me, should be done one of two ways. One is you essentially have an escape pod set near each position on the ship. Yep. Or you centralize them to where, like, okay, all hands to escape pods, and then you just have everyone running to the escape pods.
Yeah, or the third option is a combination of the two. Like, if it's a big enough ship,
Right, that's when you have a big enough ship where you need to have it for positions, and then you're going to have your auxiliary crews and, other accommodated people on board. You need escape pods as well.
Well, like, if you look at the Carrack, you have some escape pods that are right by the bridge. You've got some escape pods that are right by the cartographer deck, right next to the airlock there. If I remember right, there's two of them.
Yes.
But yeah, like, let's say if you're that belly turret gunner, you are literally as far away from any escape pods as you can possibly be on the ship. Now, maybe, and again, down the line, presumably, it will take at least like a minute or two from the point of seeing, okay, look, there's no possible way we can win this. The ship is going down. Captain puts out, all hands abandon station. Get to the escape pods. There has to be, from that point of knowing we're at the point of no return, definitively, there has to be at least a good minute and a half minimum, and much longer for some, like I'm talking like on the Carrack. You talking about like an Idris. You need a good 5 minutes or so for personnel to be able to even feasibly make your way to the escape pods and get the fuck out of there. So it's like, now, once the whole physicalized armor and all that kind of stuff has been put in, maybe we'll have that, and maybe the whole soft death thing will lead into that, to where, oh yeah, your ship is downed, but the escape pods still work. All these other functions, once they further develop it, all the other functions in there still work. I'm assuming escape pods have their own internal power supplies anyway, that kind of stuff. So, okay, hey, you've been soft killed. You can still go and run to the escape pods. But just right now, we're not anywhere near that kind of stuff.
No, and I agree. It'll probably be something where later down the line, when escape pods are working, it's going to be a case of the time you get the information where you're at that point of no return, where, okay, we're going to have to abandon the ship. Maybe you won't have to worry about that time-wise. Like, yeah, you're still going to be sprinting because it's an emergency, you want to get to the escape pod, but it's not going to be like, oh shit, we're going down, and then a second later you blow up like it is right now.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, the whole... Sorry, go on.
I was just going to comment that one of the things that you kind of brought up, Cam, that kind of leads to another issue, is that I don't like the fact that they don't, on ships that have elevators, some ships do, some ships don't, but the ones that don't, I don't like that there's no crawlway access, or that situation where, your power goes out, or, like you said, maybe there is backup power, but still, say there's 2 rear turrets, and the first gunner
First guy
A
goes. Second guy's
gets
like,
to
what
the
the fuck?
elevator. Yeah, he's taking up the elevator. Does gunner 2 have to sit there and listen to
Wait for it to cycle
elevator
through?
music? Yeah, exactly. So I don't like that. And to me, coming from the naval background, you never build a ship, a fighting ship without having alternate routes or multiple
Yes.
ways if
Yep.
redundancies if something goes wrong. So I think if there's an elevator on a ship, there should always be some kind of crawlway access hatch, kind of like the most current one that I think everyone's familiar with is the Hercules. You got the elevator, but then right next to it there's that glass ladder.
The 400i has the
always
same
have
deal.
some kind of feature like that whenever there's an elevator involved.
Agreed.
No, I fully agree, and I would be definitely fine if they were to go and go in and be like, hey, by the way, we're going to add in these itty bitty tiny little, like not even the size of Jeffrey's tubes, but even smaller than that, little things that are just barely enough to scrape through in like a full armor kind of thing. But it's literally it's one person. So on smaller ships you'd have a single one. Larger ships you might have 2, so you could have one person going up, one person going down, kind of thing, in the event of a power down situation.
Conduit.
But no, I fully agree. There has to be this stuff because, hey, power went out and the elevator's halfway between. Anyone below that, I mean, like for example, if you're on the cartography deck and your power, on the Carrack, and your power goes out, unless you can go outside and wrap around to the airlock or the ramp, you're just fucked.
Well, also, we don't know the full extent of physicalization. Who's to say that the elevator doesn't get damaged and it can't move?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just I know we're going down the rabbit hole and spitballing, but I'm just saying, like, these are all just possibilities where as long as you have that backup tube, and I kind of like something that you said there, which is they should be very small and only be able to access them if you're in certain armors. I kind of like that idea in the sense of maybe it's so small that only, like, if you've got actual like full battle rattle armor on, maybe you can't fit in there. So that kind of means that if you're planning on using those for piracy, maybe you need somebody in your team who isn't in full battle rattle because he's the guy who goes down those tunnels. He's the sneaky one. It's just, I think that might bring some gameplay. I kind of like that idea that you brought up.
To be fair, that wasn't how I meant it. I actually meant it in the way of the tube itself is barely big enough to fit someone in like a Novikov kind of armor,
but maybe without the backpack.
Rattle, but that's it. Like there's no room to like turn around or fiddle with some bullshit. Like it's literally just. It's just meant to get you from A to B. That's it. Minimum space.
Essentially,
almost like you're on a railroad of body animation while you're on. You're not going to be.
The only thing you're doing is crawling forwards or backwards, or crawling upwards and downwards. Yeah.
Still.
And you can make argument like maybe not backpacks, but you should still be able to be in armor. I agree, just because for gameplay reasons stuff. You shouldn't force players.
I don't want it to be. And maybe with further revisions of like the GUI and the interface that you have, I would be okay if there was like a way to go and be like, hey, I'm gonna be able to just like 2 button clicks. I've dropped my backpack and I drop it down in front of me. I'm dragging it behind me. I'm leaving it behind because it won't fit, whatever. But it would have to be something that could be done literally in like 2 to 3 button clicks within 1 second. If there was, because I wouldn't want there to be on the note of only certain armors will fit. I wouldn't want it to be like, hey, I'm in a Novikov armor. Great. If I remove this, I am no longer EVA capable. Or B, okay, I'm in my ADP4 heavy armor here. I got to remove this shit because I won't fit. Okay, let me go and spend 30 seconds of this precious little time I have stripping down while all this shit's going on. Like, I don't want to get into that situation to where you're having to go and fuck around with menus because nope, sorry, you won't fit here. Like I don't want to get into that kind of situation.
Also, it's forcing the player into a punishing situation when they're already in a decrepit state.
Exactly.
I think there should be some realistic expectation though. Like you don't come in and I don't know all the exact names of the armor, so I'm not going to go that route. But I'm just saying,
heavy.
Like if you don't come in and if you're coming in at heavy, you should know ahead of time. Like, hey, I'm not going to fit in those, so my battle plan should be to avoid those. Whereas, if you bring that guy who's wearing the, say, medium, light, or no armor, he does have that capability, so he's going to be your rat that sneaks up and hits the elevator code to bring down the elevator that your heavy armor guy can't fit. Like, I'd be okay with it as long as it's a well-known stat. Like, everybody knows
something that's established and to the player in some way that is not like hidden or they have to find out the hard way for themselves. Agreed. A counter to that could be you can wear heavy armor, but it's going to determine how fast you're crawling in there. Like if you're wearing no armor, you're zipping through those tunnels. If you're wearing armor,
that could be something.
That's going to impair your movement a bit.
With that, because that would be at that point it's not just a yes or no, you can or can't use it. It's okay, I've got precious little time. Do I sacrifice the 5 seconds the 5 seconds or 10 seconds longer it'll take for me to crawl down this thing to strip off my plates real quick and just be in my flight suit and go right down? Maybe yes, maybe no. Depends how depends how the interface is at that point. Stuff. But honestly, I would say that's a pretty decent compromise between the two.
I don't have a good idea here and there. But yeah, no, that's
CIG. You listening?
Right. No, but because this way it's not punishing you for like, oh, you brought the wrong armor. This isn't like you're going to Aberdeen in light armor there, and you're gonna have only like maybe 8 minutes to live. This is you're on your ship, you're doing what you normally do, and then you're being attacked, and now it's like, say pirates come along, they're attacking your ship because they're going to down your ship or in some way so they can then board you and all that. And you're like, okay, we got to crawl out of here to get to the escape pod before they come on board. We're just abandoning the ship. It's not worth fighting them and all that. But if you want to give yourself a fighting chance when you are out of the ship, it just feels a little like now you're on the back foot even more than you already are because you're now losing your ship.
Like I'm just trying to play the game, and now I'm not only in one punishing situation, it's 2 punishing situations because we were going to be going to Microtech's moons, and I'm wearing my Novikov.
I'm just trying to play like the long game with that situation. Like, okay, yes, for crawling around, you want to be nothing ideally to move around faster, but if you're in armor, you can still crawl around, but it's not ideal because you're going to be slower and more cumbersome. And it'd play into like, okay, say you're in heavy armor, you go in first, you're now screwing everyone behind you.
Yeah. No, you guys bring up good points. I don't deny that. That's it. From what I was thinking and what you guys are saying, it seems like a happy medium.
Really,
but back to the original issue was just for me is just that
the lack
they
of
need
confidence.
the designers need to be thinking a little bit more ship safety, or in where they're placing these escape pods or how they're going about placing.
As well as just placing different routes to get around aside from elevators. Like the Carrack has it
in general
up until the technical deck. With that stairwell, like the ladder, I mean.
And I mean, if they were to go and have, for example, let's say that and again, this is going a little crazier with it, but let's say, for example, that you were to have a hatch in the ceiling of the engineering room, which then goes to the floor of the cartography deck. And so if you're on the cartography deck, let's even say that there's a fold down ladder that'll like right down in front of you. It's this itty bitty little thing. It's literally just went point A to point B. But there you go. If you need to get from deck 4 to deck 3, there you go. You have a way without having to go and EVA out, because if the ship's moving, that's a no-go. At least with current mechanics. Maybe down the line with the whole EVA 2.0 that we saw, like I wouldn't want to be like hanging on by like my little magnetic grabby hands while a ship's moving around. Maybe that'll be a thing, but I would not want that.
Just to put it in context, from prior naval engineering for military ships, and this isn't just America, this is several other navies as well. Back in World War II, you had a bunch of old what they kind of called like your tin can ships prior to World War II, and they are all based off of different architectural designs. In World War II, we found out that you basically, if you take damage, every single compartment needs to have multiple escape hatches. Ever since World War II, as far as I know, every Western European and American, Canadian, Australian, and probably a few other ships have that designed in. So there is no room, no enclosed space on a ship that doesn't have a minimum of 2 access or exit points. Whether it's like Cam was talking about, it might be a regular door and then a hatch in the ceiling or the floor or one of the walls. There's always 2 ways out, and I would love to see that be designed into ships. Maybe not every single ship, like maybe if it's a 600I, it doesn't, because that's more of a civilian based. But if it's a larger class ship and it's considered, maybe capital and above, and it's military oriented, I definitely think it should have that design. Because like Cam's saying, you shouldn't have to go EVA just to get out of a damaged area.
Yep.
Agreed. Back to the Polaris. Climb our way out of that rabbit hole and into a new one with the Polaris. So we got the the concept model with the 3D, just basic 3D model rework of the Polaris interior. The ship's pretty much going to look identical for the most part. It's just a little bigger, right? That's pretty much what they were talking about. I mean,
yeah,
sounds alright.
And the internal structure completely redone.
They said like the old interior design is no longer possible due to it being too large, along with the introduction of new systems. So that's.
I just throw a call out.
Yeah.
I called it last week.
Yeah. The exterior remains the same though, aside from being larger to accommodate some of the interior changes. The role and key visuals also remain the same. It'll now feature capital grade shield generators, power plant, and coolers. This thing is now a bona fide capital ship. The Polaris currently scheduling at what point it will be placed into production, as it is a larger ship, expected to take some time. Interior layout, the bridge has opened up to provide more space and visibility. It's still going to have that double-decker bridge. The hangar has had a size increase and now allowing the Sabre to comfortably fit rather than just barely fit with the old hangar design. The engineering section will be spanning 2 decks, with the lower deck containing a capital size component and a small section at the rear containing a normal size component. Also, did you notice, like, when you first saw the Inside Star Citizen this last week, when it showed John Tracy's face, did you feel like, wow, has he been like under a rock or something? Like, a
little.
Like he must have been at the grindstone with whatever he's working on.
Well, his audio was messed up, and to me, it sounded like he was talking through like a muffled wet sock. And I immediately had the picture in my head of like a meme campaign that we should start, like stop abusing him, let him free. Like have him pictured.
He does look like he's been in prison in encampment, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Free Sean Tracy.
And it wasn't just him though. I noted at first it was his audio. I noticed, but then there was one other guy, the guy with the really big beard. I don't know his name.
The audio this
his audio
episode
is
has been a
messed
little
up, too.
weird. It wasn't just him. The audio in
Yeah.
general this episode was a little weird, but you can't not every episode's gonna have good audio. Sometimes things happen. But
Yeah.
I just my second I saw him, like, damn, dude, what have you been up to? Because we haven't seen him in a while, and now it's like
Yeah.
the 5 o'clock shadow and everything. So, like, he must have been bug smashing
he
the
pretty
hell
much
because he's
went-
talking about all the asset validation that they're talking about. The CIG tools team built custom framework. For those who don't know, they built a custom framework for all developers to use to catch early problems. This build failures can cripple a large amount of the company for an extended part of the day. Assets are compressed and sent through an asset validation tool to confirm their stability. All of this is required to keep dev builds and PTU patches streamlined and efficient, and asset validation assists developers in knowing ahead of time what is causing errors in the build. Bug smashing in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, more like PTU bug smashing for
Right.
release.
Like early alpha testing before we get our hands on it. For those who don't know what PTU is.
But yeah, we haven't heard anything out of Sean since basically what I can't think of what they called it. What was the combined arms thing called? Theaters of War. Well, once they scaled that back, that's when he went silent. So
I feel
I'd
like
say
we've
it's
heard
been
him-
a good year and a half.
I feel like we've heard something from him earlier than that, but it's been a while. Definitely been a while.
You know what happened? They said, okay, until Theaters of War is done, you're stuck in this little itty bitty closet. We'll give you food and we'll give you a bucket for the bathroom, and that's it.
Well, the problem with Theaters of War, it was a co-venture with that other company that Sony bought, so now they're never really going to get it done, unfortunately.
Well, I still
it's
think it's going to be done. It's just it's going to have to be done all in house.
Yeah.
We don't even. Yeah, well, that's true. Like, assuming it even is still on the table, then it's kind of just been in limbo.
Well, that's what we're saying is if it is still, it's all going to be done in house.
Yeah, versus what was it Fire Sprite? I believe the company was.
Is it Fire Sprite? Okay. I don't know why I was.
I
thinking
don't
Red Eye
remember.
Mods.
It's something Sprite. I just remember it was something Sprite. I don't remember Fire Sprite or Pyro Sprite. So
That
I don't
sounds
know.
right.
Something with a fire or heat related.
Yeah, they were.
But Sony
all I
bought them.
remember is they were bought out by Sony.
Yeah.
So basically, they stopped honoring their contract.
Yep. Which is funny because Sony keeps going on about Microsoft. Just a little off topic, but Sony keeps going on about Microsoft not honoring their contracts after if they buy Activision Blizzard, if that deal goes through. But like Sony, every time you acquire someone, you just negate any ongoing contracts with the studio that you purchased. So
Going to Disney, huh?
Being lawyers.
it's just double standard bullshit, typical
Business.
business. But yeah, the whole Inside Star Citizen last week was pretty good, I thought. Got a good look at the new Polaris. Honestly, it looks good. Like, the interior looks good. We got, there's going to be a brig in there. There's going to, this big med bay. It's a full-blown capital ship now, and it looks the part. And then hopefully there's alternate routes, not relying on elevators.
So here's my question. I like the Polaris, so I mean, a part of me is like, yeah, cool. I'm glad it's coming. But stepping back from my own personal preference, I have to ask this question, and I'm just asking this to kind of see what you guys think. But we know that RSI in general doesn't have a very strong, what are they calling it now? It's how like Aegis has its style and Anvil has its style.
Design language.
Design language. So RSI really doesn't have much of its stuff.
They do
based
for the
on the
exterior
fact that
of their
it's old.
ships.
It's
But-
very original, and it's not it's not concise throughout each one of their ships. They do look similar, but when you look closely, you see a lot of differences in each ship.
I was thinking
So
this
my-
when I saw
my-
the. Sorry.
So here's my question. If we don't really have much of an RSI style guide, why are they focusing on the Polaris when you've got things like the Constellation, which really, we all agree, really needs internal reworks? Why not build the design language on your smaller ships where it's a lot easier to scale it up? Whereas we know it's a lot harder to do it big and scale it down and make it fit.
I mean,
So
that's.
to me, it doesn't make sense that they're focusing on the Polaris. I would like to see them, if they're focusing on RSI style guide, let's kill two birds with one stone, which is, let's do the Connie series, because then that'll do a rework, which will make a bunch of people who already own ships in the verse happy, because they're getting their gold standard rework, and it's building the RSI style guide. That's my question.
Okay, so first off, I apologize for interrupting you. That was rude of me, and I need to stop that. Second,
No worries.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Anvil style guide for the interior of the ships was established with the Terrapin. That was the first Anvil ship to have a bona fide interior. And, I mean, RSI ships have an external design language. I think that's very evident. But you're absolutely right that it does differ, and one of the first things I saw, specifically, this came to mind when I saw the barracks in the video. Where, because they had that very angled doorway with the barracks. I'm going to find that clip. I believe this is it here. Like, the barracks, this very, I liked it. I liked how it looked. I liked the angular, kind of more space economy look of the interior space being used here. But this didn't make me think RSI when I first looked at it. Almost made me think more Anvil or something, different. But just because, they don't really have a really established interior design language with RSI. I guess, because, again, the Constellation, I don't think it's fair. It's the Constellation's the only real RSI ship that has an interior. You got the Mantis, you got the Aurora, but...
Yeah.
And you got the Ursa.
First
The Ursa...
starting level, or just above starting level, interior design that you could really develop.
Well, also going with the Constellation and the Ursa rover, they do share a design there, but those are really old, and since those ships came out and existed, you had the Aurora get a rework, which I thought was that was going to be the establishing interior design, and it does have some of that angular things now that I think back to it, but it's just so small that you're not really looking around because there's not much to look around at. The Mantis has some interior design, but it really is just a blank room with a coffee machine, a bed, and a pilot seat. Just because of the ship it is. It's not a big ship. I would say half, if not even a little bit more than half of the ship is the quantum interdiction device. So, the real RSI ship that has an interior that's worth noting and would set the standard for design language, the interior design language would be the Constellation. And I agree. That, it probably should. They should do the rework of that. Regardless of, whether the Polaris, whatever state the Polaris is in, development-wise, just because it's currently in game, they're doing gold standard passes on ships like a lot of the Aegis ships and stuff. Do it for the Constellation too. It's one of the oldest ships in the game. It's probably one of the most common ships among players. In regards to how many people own what ship.
At least for multi-crew, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially since it's one of the most common loaners for a lot of ships.
Yep.
And
plus, it was for a long time. It was the biggest ship that we could have. Yeah. So essentially, everyone who had a starter ship that had moved up, that was the that was the next logical, that was as far as you could go up. So everyone bought one of those, and
Yep.
everyone had them because that was the only thing available for a long time. So there's a shit ton of them hanging out in people's hangars.
There's just,
Since then, go.
oh, I was just gonna, no, you finish because mine's gonna be short.
All I'm saying is that once there were more ships available, people would skip over it and go to other ships. So recently you don't see as much of them, but there's still a lot of them sitting in hangars from that.
Yeah.
What was that, like almost 5-year period where it was the only big ship that you could get your hands on. So there are a lot of them.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say that there's just a lot of stuff attached to that ship, whether it be nostalgia, whether it be a level of not flair, but because it's one of the oldest ships, it's one of the most common ships, like all the things we just talked about. Like there's a lot attached to the Constellation series. People like that series of ship. It is like when you think of multi-crew, it's one of the multi-crew ships, even still today in game. So like it feels like a no-brainer to do that. Give it a gold standard rework just to even if it's just an interior rework, just to establish an RSI design language for interior design of the RSI ships and RSI facilities even. Like, okay, this is what RSI watch face will look like, living quarters and RSI cockpits and stuff will look like in the future versus we're going on nearly 10, like 9-year-old interior design for the Constellation right now.
Somewhere on there, yeah.
They did rework it. So this is about 8 or 9 years old now, the design we have, at most. And it's like that's like it still looks good in some places, but there's a lot of wasted space. The bridge does not need to be as big as it is.
Living quarters absolutely suck.
Living quarters are worse than a Drake ship.
Well, also too, you have the Phoenix shows that you have half the cargo space wasted because it goes and it's like, hey, we're going to have this whole back section being these luxurious areas while still having the same amount of cargo space as all the other versions except the Taurus. It's like, well, okay, but if the Phoenix can make use of that space, why the fuck can't all the others?
Are you sure it's the same amount of cargo? Because obviously it can't be stacked as high. But
nope, it's the exact same amount because the cargo bay is the same. All that's changing is essentially where like the walkway is around there. That part, because the cargo never goes up that high. So the actual cargo bay
that's better. Just how high the cargo
just has
length.
essentially a lower ceiling on it than what we normally see. Normally, of course, it's open air.
Yeah.
And then they make use of that top space, and I'm like, that's great. Do this for all the others.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was like, because it's open space, it can stack higher, but that's my mistake.
Oh. And I mean, maybe they'll change that in the future. I don't know, but I kind of feel like if they were going to do that, that would have changed with the Taurus, with the whole it holds more cargo thing.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that their website specifically does not list the cargo capacity for any of them.
To be fair, the website's been horribly out of date for fucking years. So, by the way, for anyone who might not know this, who might just be tuning in for the first time, the ship stats on the website are horribly out of date. I don't know who the fuck's maintaining this shit. Yeah, or just flat out wrong. I don't know who's maintaining this ship. I mean, we literally saw this with like when the Spirit series came out from Crusader. Literally, it was like, oh, it's got this. Oh, they've got that. Oh, it's got this other thing. And it's like, look, you've got 3 or 4 different people saying 3 or 4 different fucking things in the pamphlet, on the website, on the new flashy ship page for it. Fucking hell. Like how does this, how is this getting through everything?
Technically, Turbulent is responsible for the page.
Well, they're doing a shit job.
Claim
I mean, no offense to them.
They're not getting the information from CIG. Or the other alternative that I've heard is, well, we're just not going to focus on it because all the stats are going to change. And every couple of years, CIG claims, okay, now we're going to fix it. And every time they do, it's just another iteration of bad, inaccurate numbers. So it's been
In other words, use
it's been a
Urkel.com.
problem since
Or
day one.
Urkel.games, sorry.
Yeah.
I will
But,
say though, the part of the video that has the brig and you can see the hallway in the background, it has like an arch where majority of it is slanted upwards and then slants. Like that looks RSI to me. So there are like obviously the Polaris is definitely, I guess, starting to establish an RSI interior design, but it is, yeah, you're absolutely right. It is weird starting with the bigger ship and then I guess when eventually they get to the Constellation, if they ever do, they'll have to be scaled down.
Another issue that I have is, okay, I will go on record as saying I'm all for us bringing in every possible ship we can, and the bigger, the better. Like that, I want to see the big ships in the verse. To me, that's it's gameplay, it's immersion, all that good stuff. It creates the feel that I'm not in I'm not in a universe that's only populated by mopeds and scooters. But having said that, with the current state of the game and the foreseeable short range future, and what I mean by that is 1 to 2 years, if you bring out the Polaris, how many people get to actually play with it? Like only a few people, a small percentage of people own those ships, and a slightly bigger percentage know those people and will be able to to do gameplay. But in general, versus the Connie series, all the different versions of the Connie, you bring out the Polaris and hey, great, it's the latest and greatest thing on the block, but only a small percentage of the community is going to get to actually enjoy that. Whereas if you did the Connie rework, like we just discussed, think about how many more people that would impact, and CIG would be able to get more data because more people are interacting with those to see like, hey, we did this right, we did that wrong. Let's fix this little thing in the next RSI ship that we do. If they go the Polaris route, that's less input that they get. So again, doesn't make sense to me.
Yep, no, I agree.
I agree as well, just because it's these ships need crew. Like even something like a Hammerhead, which is a little bit smaller than a Polaris, I'd say.
Well, also, what's it going to do to the server?
You need crew.
Yeah. If you
people
crew it, how many Polarises can you fit in your shard?
Yeah.
That
reminds me on Star Citizen Live. The only thing worth noting I wanted to point out is bravo to Jared being a hero by conducting a lot of damage control and putting out a lot of proverbial fires before the community started them with what was said on Star Citizen Live. And we knew this, but he did further confirm that, Pyro's not coming until server meshing is done and implemented, at least static server meshing, that is. But again, we knew this, but it is still nice to know that that is the status of server meshing in Pyro. So, just thought it was worth noting. With the Star Citizen Live on Friday. Because they talked to I don't remember what team it was, but they talked to devs from one of the teams.
Wait,
and
wasn't that the Q&A thing?
I don't remember.
I thought that was the QA team from Montreal.
I think it was Montreal. You are correct. I'm double checking. Yep, Montreal. Yep.
Yeah, I thought that one would. How do I put this? Overall, I wasn't really interested in it because it was more just like, hey, you guys are a team. Let's talk about your team kind of a thing. And that doesn't really interest me. But they did hit upon a couple things that I think were really good for the community to hear, which is they went a little bit more in depth about how QA works, I think. And that's something that I think a lot of the community doesn't understand. And so I think having that knowledge is definitely helpful for the layperson because it stops the whole, God, why didn't the QA team catch this obvious error? And if you better understand how a QA team works, maybe you're not going to be complaining as much.
Yeah, I think both this past week's Inside Star Citizen, Star Citizen Live did a good job of kind of establishing, hey, this is how these things work and why we have so many issues and we can't have to get all. Like, they were good at establishing that. And it's funny because this past week, or rather this past weekend, I was in game talking to people, trying to help new players out that came in from the free fly, and they bought the game and all that. And there was a guy who has been there for a while, but he's just complaining, and there are valid criticisms, but he was just complaining about everything in the game, like, why is it so unstable? Why don't CIG do this? Why don't they do something like what the other developers do? Blah 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 blah. And myself and some other guys in the chat were telling him how well, because CIG are doing X Y Z, they have to develop the tech and the tools that they need to then make the game. They don't have the unlimited resources and tried and true tech and engine that a AAA gaming company has and have used on a previous.
Were you white knighting, Mando?
So, maybe, but
Tell Mom.
better. Someone needs to tell her something. But the whole thing with was kind of getting at the whole. You have people that just don't understand how game development works. And they want it to be like, oh, well, why is it taking 10 years? It's like, because no one's done anything like this.
Yeah.
And because they're not, they have $500 million now, a little over now. But that was accumulated over a span of 10 years.
Well,
and they had to restart development in 2015 because they switched to a new engine.
Can I throw a statement in there?
No, of course not.
Maybe.
Yeah, go ahead.
One key thing to remember for anyone who's unfamiliar with this project, what Mando said is accurate. While some people may argue, that there's other aspects of what you see in Star Citizen and every other game, but Star Citizen is the first to actually put them all together. So you might say, no, this other Star Citizen doesn't actually have anything new. I saw this feature in this other game. True, but no other game took all the different, best aspects and meshed them all together. That's what Star Citizen's trying to do.
Well said.
That's why it's so hard.
It's a case of you go, oh, this is like from that, and that's like from this, and that's like, and you see each of these different things is from something different, but now they're all together in a same location, and that itself is something new, and that is never been done before in a way that CIG now has so many issues to deal with as a result of it.
A great example would be ships. Prior to Star Citizen, no other game had a design where you could EVA in space, fly into your ship, close the door, walk around on your ship, get in the pilot seat, and fly somewhere. And it was all seamless. That had never been done.
Yes.
Different aspects of that had been done separately, individually in other games, but never all combined in one
like many games in the last
experience.
20 years have allowed you to walk around inside your ship. Many games have allowed you to EVA around in space, but none of them have ever allowed you to just do that all in one go without any loading.
Yeah.
Like, just the fact that there are no loading screens in the game, even in the alpha state that it is right now.
Yeah.
The only loading screen you see is loading up the menu and then loading into a server. That's it. Seamless based planet surface transition and all that. The fact that we have a fully explorable gas giant, a lot of people kind of forget. No other game really has a fully explorable gas giant the way that Star Citizen does.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just a ball of gas, but that's still pretty damn cool.
Yeah. I mean, when I stop and actually think about it, I'm still blown away with the whole, you can go from the surface of a planet and fly all the way up, technically to the sun, to where the sun's central location generally is. I know this. I know, Cam, the sun isn't there, but it will be eventually. But just that whole you're
not
standing
real,
on the
can't hurt you.
surface. You get in your ship. You take off, fly out of atmosphere. You're in space. You fly to another moon. That's insane.
It is.
No, it really, really is, and it makes Star Citizen a very pretty game as a result of it.
Yeah.
Trying to find. I remember like recording. This was like last year. I had that similar moment where I'm just like kind of taking in the enormity of the situation I was in game. Maybe 2 years ago now, but like when I recorded them, trying to find the specific clip. But yeah, it's just that moment of you're just flying from space, like literally past orbit, going into orbit, then through the atmosphere, and then landing on the surface of a planet. And that's no other. Like, yeah, now you have some games that do it, but not in the same way, not in the way that's as realistic as Star Citizen does.
I don't know of any game that'll let you EVA around your ship, get in the ship, fly the ship around, and then go to a planet, land on the planet seamlessly.
Yeah.
Or
even, to put it more simply, go, take off from the planet, go up into space, stop, walk around your ship, open a door, EVA over to your friend's ship, get in his ship, and fly off and continue on.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the fact that you can just, you're flying your ship, then you get out of the pilot seat and just walk around inside the ship. That alone was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can land that ship inside of a bigger ship and do the same thing. Like that.
Yep, and then walk around the bigger ship.
Yeah, and like that layer.
Get in the other ship and fly off in that ship.
Yep, and that's just that layered gameplay of here's these different things you can do layered on top of each other that allow you to do multiple different things at the same time, and all that. Like that's the type of stuff Star Citizen is doing and innovating on that in an otherwise declining industry.
Also, too,
so you just actually brought up. Go for
Sorry,
it.
go on.
Nope.
On the note of EVA, for those who haven't seen it, if you go and watch I think it was at SitCon, they showed off because right now with the EVA system that's in Star Citizen, if I boot up the game right now, you're essentially always in a top-down. I'm kind of like I'm swimming, but there's no water. Kind of way to where there's a up and a down. You're always facing, regardless of how you're rotated from your perspective, you're always in this kind of a swimming kind of motion. So to speak.
More like a dog paddle motion, rather.
Yeah,
to be more accurate. Yeah.
But with the new EVA system that they're showing off and will be in soon here, it's now to where you are when you are in EVA and you're like, okay, I've just pushed off from my ship. You assume kind of a prone Iron Man flying kind of pose to where like you streamline yourself. And right now, you don't have like fuel or anything that powers your suit for EVA movement. And when you stop pushing any movement keys, your character automatically assumes a relative halt in terms of their velocity. Now, when you push out, like, hey, I've stopped my ship in space. My buddy has his ship over there. I'm going to transfer over to his ship. If I go and just jump out and I don't touch anything after that, I'm going to stop in the middle between the two ships. Now, when you go and push out, you're going to actually go and keep on floating until you go and arrest your movement, either through EVA fuel or if you hit on something to where like, oh, hey, I hit the side of the ship, whoops, you'll be able to use magnetic clamps on your suit, halt yourself, and essentially be able to crawl along the surface of the ship. We don't know how that works when the ship is under movement. I'm assuming that you're going to be flung off into space because otherwise it's going to break your fucking arm, but we'll see how they do it there.
I like to paint the picture, like if right now, if you have two Cutlass Blacks, with the doors open on the sides, and right now you just jump out into space, the only way to get from one to the other is to manually use your EVA harness, is fuel, or the non-existent fuel, to just EVA over. Whereas in the future, you don't have to use the EVA harness at all. You can just jump, right? You propel yourself, and you would just keep moving until you're either into the gravity of the other ship, or if you missed the ship, then you're just going to keep going until you either use your EVA harness to stop yourself or collide into something.
Well, they've also talked about tractor beams too. So.
And tractor beams are going to be a thing. Like right now, we have the tractor beam attachment. You can use that to propel yourself towards something, to pull yourself towards something. I mean,
yeah, it's definitely tier 0. It needs a lot of work. I agree. It looks very interesting. I think that I think the mode that they showed us, while it looks cool, I think it's very situational. I think they're going to have other body positions for different situations. I don't think that, like, because you think about like that Iron Man pose that they have right now. That looks great. It looks really cool. But would you really be doing that if you're assaulting something? Wouldn't you want to have a rifle up and be essentially back into the current like fetal position style, and using some kind of EVA thrust to be able to do that? So that's where I'm just saying, like, I hope it's transitional. It's not just that.
I hope it's dynamic, like the
thing.
pose will change depending on your movement, rather than
Yeah.
just static.
Yeah.
Oh, you're now in this pose. You're now in that pose. You're now in this other pose. Like, no, I hope it changes based on what you're doing. I agree.
Or like on the above noted scenario of I'm jumping from one ship to another ship. Why would I go and I flatten myself out? I'd probably stay in a upright, similar to the pose we've got now. I'd probably be like, have it be like a giant leap kind of thing, as opposed to flattening myself out or doing anything else, because I'm assuming I'm going to land on my feet in gravity on the other end.
Or you're in like the big X-Man pose and you're just trying to hit any part of that ship and grab onto it,
Yeah, like free fall pose, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's something else we need to learn. Fucking parachutes or something.
Well, they talked about it, and
whole
obviously
nother
parachutes are.
No.
We've talked about it too. Parachutes are obviously not a great idea in varying atmospheric conditions,
Yep.
but I remember them
Sometimes.
talking about using your EVA harness will allow you to do both assisted jumps in various conditions, and it would act as essentially a jet-propelled stopping device, so that you don't just become human toothpaste on whatever surface of a celestial body you're landing on.
Yeah, I think some kind of either like backpack or seat that you sit in, with essentially kind of like an ejection seat style with a rocket on it, would be the most. What's the proper words for it? Would make sense in the most multiple environments.
Fair enough.
So you're saying you don't want to be Slim Pickens riding the bomb to hell?
No. I totally get where Cam's coming from, and I understand how a lot of people, parachutes are cool, and they would make for some interesting gameplay. I'm not saying you don't have parachutes in the game at all. I'm just saying don't have them as emergency escape devices.
Don't have them as the
I'd be
default.
Totally okay with having like Hey-Ho and Halo rigs for like tactical use. Absolutely. But those should be customizable for the environments that you're going into. Whereas the emergency escape devices, I think, should just be, tried and true rocket packs or ejection seat type.
Right, like you want the default to be something that will work in any atmospheric condition. Whereas a parachute, yes, you can use this as an option, but it's not the default option. Like that, I think, is the best way to go about it.
I mean, just to kind of give you context, like there in the real world right now, we've got very, very specialized parachute insertion teams in the military, where like that's all that they do is they practice day in, day out, multiple different environments, weather situations, day and night, all that kind of stuff. Like these guys are specifically trained to do this, and yet in the past 50 years, there's like maybe two hands worth of counting on two hands worth of times that's actually happened, because parachutes are just, there's so much inherent risk of one little thing going wrong. And when you're trying to put a whole team together to land on a very specific spot, and you're the commander of the operation, and you're given an option of like, hey, we can use this type of helicopter, and we're guaranteed to get the whole team on spot at exactly the same time, ready to for combat, or we can use this parachute system, and there's 75% chance, success rate that everyone gets to the same spot at the same time. Like you would always choose the 100% option. That's why they're very rarely used, and they're only used when it absolutely has to be done. Total stealth, no helicopters, no noise kind of situation. So just throwing that out there. Shutting up.
No, I agree with that. But I do want the options of parachutes and stuff just for that cool factor or for that more archaic factor, right?
Dude, doing a base jump off a high tower in ArcCorp, that'd be awesome.
Exactly. Also because, things like parachutes and also just things that would be even default for emergency situations that tech could also be used for recreational or other gameplay loops that aren't just tied to here's your emergency ejection system and all that. Like, no, you can also use the same tech for something else. Like, okay, yeah, base jumping from a tower or whatever the hell else you can think of.
Well, I mean, I know it's one of Cam's favorites, having the nails where you're doing an orbital insertion via some kind of, almost escape pod type device that just lands you on the ground ready for combat.
Yep.
But to go back to something that Cam said earlier about, walking around in your ship, one little thing that I would love to see CIG focus on, I realize that what I'm saying here now is, in the big picture, what they're doing doesn't matter at all, and we're not going to see it for a long time. But I would really like to see it. I'd like to see them come up with more things to do inside your ship when you're in that quantum state or just traveling around. So you want to get up
idle.
and I agree. Sorry.
Or even just idle, because remember later on in the game, your cargo is going to have to be physically loaded. So if you're loading, 20-something SCU or even more onto your ship, you got a big hauler, you got a caterpillar, or the whole series. You're going to be there a while waiting as that cargo is loaded onto your ship, assuming someone else is doing it and not you.
I would be perfectly okay with it being something as simple as like, I'm restocking my fridge with supplies, or maybe you can actually read documents, lore documents on your on the in ship TV system or whatever. Like I of course in my head I'm picturing like the MSR, so I'm sitting in the lounge area by the chess table and reading a lore post or something like that, like just. Or maybe I'm walking around the ship, fixing pieces, bits and bobs or something. And that's where I know we got to wait for, the components to come in and all that stuff. But I'd be okay with hand medium right now, where you're just like, it's something to do other than just standing in your ship. That's
right. Like that's why I want the Nerf gun to be purchasable in shops, just for that. Like, it gives you something to do in those moments right now. Or you can just, play with a freaking Nerf gun. You got more, share it with your buddies, and you can have Nerf tag or something. But,
yeah.
I like the lore post ideas, because you have Galactopedia, which is all these, one paragraph sized little lore posts on the various things that are written in verse. Like, they're not, lore posts for us to read. They're lore posts that, exist in universe on, an online data, or Spectrum-based database in versus in verse, so that should be available on your MobiGlass to access and read. Same with some of the lore posts they have in the Comlink. I think every Tuesday, where it's this interview series, Star Watch, I think it's one of them, and all these different things they can do. Like this way you can look on your MobiGlass. Just you have time to kill. You're in quantum travel. You can read. Yes, you can always do something out of game, but this way you're not out of game. This way, if something happens, you're still in game, you're still alert, but you're also, chilling, doing something that's not whatever. You're breaking up the monotony of some of the
I think it'd be great if they also allowed maybe Spectrum posts, so you could actually, like, I don't know, like, go read the latest patch notes for the latest download. Because you saw it was available, you downloaded it and jumped in, but you didn't read the patch notes. And hey, you're in Quantum, you got nothing to do. Now's a great time to read the patch notes. Something like that. Having that ability. Also, I'd like to start a Kickstarter campaign to get a dog whistle for Mandalorian.
Oh boy.
training
lost
order.
Yeah, he died. Sometimes I can still hear his voice though.
No, I'm still here. Well, I
That's
died a long
just a
time ago,
ghost
but
in the
that's
machine.
irrelevant. All right, so we talked about the. Do we have anything else?
Pineapple?
I kind of off on a tangent. I saw a Salty Mike video, which for those who don't know, he's a content creator. He tends to be a little bit on the, how do I put this properly?
Negative.
He's notorious for calling out bullshit that he sees as bullshit. Not saying that he's right or wrong about it. Just saying, if it's
he thinks
negative,
it's
he'll
bullshit,
call it
he's gonna
out.
throw it out there.
Yeah. And sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong, but that's just my own personal opinion. Others will vary, but I think overall, I think he's good for the community. I'll put it that way. But he had a really good video, I thought, recently. I just saw it, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before. He's doing a reaction, and what it was is it basically another content creator had put together a video of shorts of everything that CIG has put out in all their different show variations, iterations, renaming schemes of comments about modularity. And basically, it shows you that, number one, CIG has repeatedly talked about modularity in ships that we don't even think about anymore. The Cutlass was actually supposed to be modular. A lot of people don't realize that. Not the Caterpillar, but the actual Cutlass. Way back in the day, we're talking like videos from like the 2015 time frame, 2014 time frame, when they're like, oh yeah, no, we're gonna have different modules for the Cutlass. You can swap out the different internals. There was never gonna be a black, blue, red version. There's just gonna be the Cutlass, and then you got the different modules to put in there for the different missions. So he shows that, and another thing, and this is that I definitely keyed in on. Surprise, surprise. The video shows that marketing is responsible for the decisions on modularity and when those modules will be available. So not the development team, marketing.
Like every episode, curse you, marketing team.
Yeah. But it's about a 20-minute long video, and it's pretty good if you're interested in the whole modularity issue that's going around the community right now. I'd say that's an interesting video to watch. Not saying it's right or wrong, but it's worth taking a look at to, balance your opinion with, or you can totally disagree with it and say it's a bunch of bullshit. But, at least you've seen what other people are thinking. So recommend checking that out.
Yeah, I agree, and it's also just goes back to what we were talking about last week with how CIG is just super wishy-washy with all the modularity in general. Very will they, won't they? Over the last few years, I think now they're finally settling into something with modularity, but in 10 years that might change, or 10 years in a year it might change. Hopefully in 10 years it changes for the better, but
I think eventually we will get it. It's just a question
Yeah.
of, 2 years or 10 years.
Pretty much.
And if it's 10 years, then essentially why the F are you talking about it now? Like, that's clickbaity to me.
Yeah.
If you know that you're not going to be able to do it now, now meaning a time frame, say 1 to 2 years. If you know you can't do it now, or you're not going to do it now, then you shouldn't be discussing it or marketing for it. That's my opinion.
Remember, Squadron 42 is perpetually 2 years out. It will always be 2 years out.
But yeah, that's about it that I got for Star Citizen stuff.
Cam, any updates in the leaks?
Not really.
What about the latest Alpha 318 Evocati build?
Trying to remember. So the whole, for anyone who has been somewhat following, there was a bit of a kerfluffle about bed logging being removed, and a worry that, okay, why, like, we can understand why we're taking a step back here, but this really wasn't communicated. But that is, at least in the current build that went out, I think it was just today, bed logging is back in. So it looks like at least that it's not a sudden change of surprise it's gone. It's no, we're working on getting it to work with PES and all the other systems coming in 318. But that's about it, really.
Actually, it's interesting you bring that up. I had forgotten about that. Space Tomato recently had a comment about kind of how the general age bracket of the game is definitely changing, in the sense that he's noticing that there's much more talk in the community about, from younger players who are talking about things like bed logging, as in, why do we have it? Why do we need it? Like, we should just be able, and I think we kind of discussed this last week.
We discussed this last week.
Essentially,
yeah.
the idea of, why should I have to log out and then log back in at the same spot I logged out at? And I just thought that was kind of interesting that we discussed it, and then last week between last week and this week, you got Space Tomato kind of talking about that same kind of change in the community. The younger people kind of questioning game mechanics that I think us older people kind of just think of as standard, and the younger people are going like, well, no, I don't want that. That's going to limit me too much. That's
when you say younger, do you
like
mean newer players or younger players?
Both. Younger,
Fair.
as in the
like newer backers that just came
crowd.
into the game, and also age-wise,
yeah. So
just figured that was worth clarifying.
I'm not bringing it up to pass judgment. I'm just commenting that it's interesting that that's kind of going around the community, those discussions, and I'm starting to wonder, will that actually have an impact on how CIG builds out this game in the future? Are they going to have a loud enough voice to impact us? Personally, my personal opinion is I don't want what I consider kind of like the YOLO attitude of gameplay. I would like to see a more of a thinking game, which I know is not popular with a lot of younger people. I won't say everybody, but there's definitely that YOLO crowd that just wants to play for 45 minutes of running around shooting things, and they're done. They don't want to have to think about logistics and planning and
which is why I think Squadron Star Marine is important.
Yeah, that would be a great place for that kind of stuff.
And it goes back to the whole Theaters of War. Like, Theaters of War would provide that crowd that kind of, here's that Star Citizen twist on your preferred gameplay style or gameplay type of gameplay. right?
Absolutely.
Like, you have the ships, you have all the stuff that you see in Star Citizen normally, but it's faster paced. It's more, you instant respawns. You don't like fly all the way back out to wherever you are, and all the permadeath stuff and everything that'll be later in with the Death of Spaceman and all that. Like,
Yeah,
you don't
it's
have to deal with
virtual.
that.
You can die as many times as you want, and there's leaderboards.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm totally down with that.
I have been noticing over the last week that the newer citizens have come in with the free fly and now post free fly. A lot of younger crowd has, and I'm not trying to be like, oh, they're like, but I did meet like a few kids. At least they sounded like kids.
Yeah.
They could be like high school or older. They just have high pitched voice. It happens, but I think a lot of kids are now getting into Star Citizen just because Star Citizen this year has definitely become more popular, more well known. It's circulated a bit more. So.
Yeah. Well, remember we had that one. I don't know if he's still active, but we had that one very young kid that used to be in the Horde.
Yeah, I don't remember what happened to him.
He was he sounded like he was about 8 years old.
I don't think he was that young, but yeah, I do remember.
But he sounded that.
Yeah.
I remember running into him like about 2 years later, and his hormones had changed, so his voice levels had dropped, and I didn't even recognize who he was until we started talking. And I was like, "Oh wow!" But not saying anything negative about him.
No, we're just the entire purpose of this discussion is just to point out what is going on, not trying to shed any type of light on it, just other than a light on it, not. Yeah.
Discussions are happening. Is what we're noting.
Discussions are occurring.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is worth knowing. Also, on the bed thing, like we talked about it last week, but just to kind of sum that up, we were talking about how, yes, it would be nice if you log out in the middle of nowhere, you should still be where you logged out when you log back in, regardless of a bed. But obviously logging out and then back in through a bed would give you added bonus and stat. Your character's well rested, maybe your accuracy's better and all that stuff, or maybe not accuracy, but stamina and everything like that.
Well, put all that aside, here's the biggest question that I have. It's an MMO, which means that you're going to have people who play regularly, you're going to have people who play infrequently. How do you do it that you log in where you logged out? But let's say two people or let's say one person logs out, doesn't come back for several months. In that time, somebody else came along and built a hab and is playing every day and goes into that hab every day. Then that first player comes back after several months and he logs back in. How does CIG handle that scenario effectively so it's not game breaking and you don't have a ship spawning, an Aurora spawning inside this guy's, built hab? Like, how would you do that? How do they handle that is, I guess, the question that I have.
I'm leaving that up to Tony Z to figure out, but that is a good question.
So that's the only negative side I see to
you're gonna have that issue regardless of bed logging, though. You're gonna have that issue regardless of bed logging or just logging out on foot. That issue is just gonna be a logging in and out issue, regardless of whether it's through a bed or you're just logging out while sitting on the floor of the forest in Microtech or something.
True. So yeah, you're right. It's not necessarily a bed logging issue. It's just a logging issue. You're right. But same thing goes for ships. Let's say bed logging, and we still don't know because CIG hasn't said what they plan. But what happens when you do have, let's say a prospector, and you and a buddy go out and he only plays occasionally. He logs out in your bed, in your prospector. You don't play with him for several weeks, and then suddenly he decides to come back. You're not in the verse, and your ship's not there. What does he spawn back into? You know?
And I mean, in
Just
general,
like,
too, there has to be a balance they'll need to hit at some point between simulation realism
yes.
and game. And, you know, because it's like no one wants it to be like, oh, hey, you rolled a bad die when you ate that last torpedo burrito, and now your character has to spend the next 15 minutes in the toilet. Like, yeah, but besides the most die-hard of simulation fans, absolutely no one wants that kind of fucking gameplay.
Yeah.
So it's like there's got to be a balance between the game and the world the game exists in. But I'm fully like, honestly, like my personal opinion on how the game is going along, I think the whole aspect of bed logging, needing, of logging out using a bed is the only way to maintain your position. I think that should go away, and it should just be you when you log out, you log in at least as close as possible, if not the closest possible point to that. So, you know, I log out, I haven't played for a month, someone built a base right where I had landed at. Okay, fine, it moves me, 50 feet yonder to the nearest available clear spot on the same planet here. Something like that. Okay, and it does a little search around there. Okay, fine. If it can't go and put me there, it'll put me on the orbital station nearby. Something like that.
Yeah.
There needs to be contingency plans in place for.
Yeah.
We can't spawn you here anymore because of X reason, and then it goes, okay, well,
and
we
I
can't spawn you
that.
anywhere near here because of X reason. So we're gonna spawn you
Yeah, okay.
here as a result of whatever cascading issues of you can't spawn here anymore.
Yeah.
I would be okay with them saying, like, your spot is now occupied, so we bumped you to the nearest town that has a med bed or something. Like,
I mean,
to me that makes sense.
Fine.
But I'm not bringing it up. I didn't bring it up for us to solve the problem. I'm just kind of pointing out, like, that's something that CIG definitely needs to address. I know they're thinking about it, but I think they need to communicate with us better, kind of what they're thinking of doing.
The case is, we know that there's an issue. They know there's an issue, and they're working on it. But we don't know that they're working on it, and we didn't know how they're going to work on it. That's kind of, I guess, the situation we're in right now. Is we know they know we know.
I know that you know that I know that you
exactly. Know. But yeah, I think that's a lot of the case with CIG. Is we know, they know, we know they know, but we need them to tell us what they know.
Yeah. They need to bring us into the loop.
Yeah.
And again,
keep us appraised.
I think that would be okay if they were consistent in just saying, this isn't what we're doing, but this is what we're thinking of doing, because and that's where they educate us, right? Like they say, the reason we're thinking of going this direction is because of this. And that would educate the community. And I think that also gives CIG the opportunity that you might have somebody out there with a good idea that makes a comment, in Spectrum, that actually catches some dev's eye, and he goes, oh, hey, we didn't think of that. Like, here's an idea. Because we communicated what we were thinking, now it's a back and forth conversation kind of a thing, in the sense that, they're getting input. Probably 99.9% of it is bad input, but at least there's a chance of getting a good input. Whereas if they're not communicating at all with us, there's no chance of that input.
Right. Yeah.
That's my take.
No, I agree. It's essentially a case of, you could probably solve it on your own, but it can't hurt to at least communicate more with us so that we can at least try to help. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like, it can't be a bad thing. Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of bad input, but you're gonna have bad input anyways.
Exactly.
At least here, you're
Exactly.
increasing the chances of good input.
It's a lottery. You might find that one message that actually is a good idea versus knowing that all the messages are bad.
Right. Like I was telling you, like with that case I had Sunday night? Saturday night, where I was in game and this guy was complaining about Star Citizen, and again, valid complaint, but it was very evident that he didn't understand what CIG was doing.
Talking about me, man.
And look, you're an idiot, okay? Okay.
Oh,
The truth comes out.
call it like it is, huh?
As always. No, but jokes aside, it's this communication issue with CIG, and also back to the whole thing with we were talking about with the younger crowd wanting the lack of bed logging and all that sort of, and the more faster paced gameplay as opposed to the more mill sim and just simulator aspect of Star Citizen. A lot of it is perception and expectation, obviously, but it's also the fact that it's a combination of both, in that people need to come into this knowing what it is, right? Like, this is an alpha. This is currently in development. This is not a finished game by any means, still being in development. But people also need to, like, it's a case of CIG needs to communicate, or rather the marketing team specifically needs to communicate this better. And people themselves that are getting into the game just need to do research. Take the time, hey, before you, click that pledge button and get into it after you're seeing a cool video, do a little research, search up some stuff, read on the website if you can navigate the mess that it is. Just take some time before you try to jump in, because it'll be worth it. You're taking an hour out of your time, say, right, to read up on it. At least this way you know what you're getting into, rather than thinking, oh, this is going to be this cool space game, and then you realize this isn't, this is so glitchy, or this is all whatever, blah blah blah, whatever it is.
All what I assumed it was.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by it's about perception and expectations. Is I'm not saying everyone's an idiot for not expecting it to be finished, whatever. Just that you got to take the time to know what you're getting into, and that's good advice just for everything, but Star Citizen especially.
At the very worst, this is something that I do. Whenever I see a new game that catches my eye, one of the first things I do before I even devote the time to actually going in and doing research, actual reading research, go YouTube it. Find somebody who's not all flash and clickbait, but just find some videos of gameplay and watch those and see. You can usually tell pretty quick, what the content provider is skipping over, and what they think is cool, and you get a feel for the game, and then you go look at somebody else and you see what the other guy was skipping over, and you go, oh, there's the problem areas. Okay, I can live with that, or no, that's game breaking. I can't deal with this. But it's a good, quick way to get a feel for if that game is worth more research and delving into. And it's easy because you're just watching a few videos.
Exactly. That is actually a perfect starting point for any game, not just Star Citizen. Just watch gameplay videos, just raw gameplay videos, no editing, things like that. Just if, like, for instance, if it's a story-based game, watch someone's first 3 parts or whatever of the story. Just you're gonna get a little spoiled, but at the same time you're gonna see what the gameplay is like, and that will really tell you, is this what I want with that game?
Yeah. Yep. I think it'd be cool if Star Citizen actually had a channel on their website that was maybe like their devs playing little snippets of the game, maybe 5-10 minute snippets. Don't have to have a bunch of them, but maybe maybe like 10 videos that span over, say, like the last 2 builds of just their devs doing different things in the game, to allow people a quick reference to be able to click on and go, watch a 2-minute, 5-minute video of that gameplay and kind of go, oh yeah, no, this is totally what I'm into.
Gotcha. So I'll
Or,
message Xylo and I'll try to get him in game
Yep.
with me again, and we'll see what we can do.
make it happen.
Or else.
I do have a video where I was playing with Xylo, and it was fun. It was glitchy. Obviously, this was back in like 3.11, I think. So like there was a draw distance issue where if you're like more than 300 meters away from something, you're not seeing something moving. You're seeing it kind of teleport around.
Yeah.
I'm glad to say they have fixed that issue since then. But so it does make sniping feasible in game now.
I want to add, cannot be produced. Those videos cannot be produced by marketing.
Yeah. But yeah, I do like,
Otherwise,
for
you'll just
instance,
see them loading condoms with cargo in the cargo bay.
right. I gotta say, as flashy as that Taurus commercial is, like, it's a good commercial, but I just hate the whole it lands in the cargo deck. It's like, you don't do that. We don't know if that's ever gonna be a thing.
Yeah. Actually, Soul Citizens just did an interesting video. They're showing kind of like things that we used to have in the past that we don't have now. And one of the clips that they showed was when they first brought the thruster system online. And it's like a 5-minute video of people trying to land in hangars. And it's hilarious ship crash video.
Yeah. I honestly, one of the features I miss the most is just free jumping, especially of late. Blind jump, like where free quantum jumping, where you don't have to go to a marker. You just spool up the drive wherever you're aiming, hold B, boom, you're on your way there.
Yep. Bring it back.
Yeah.
Must have.
We talked more in depth about that last
it.
week too, but just definitely a feature that is needed.
Well, I'm worried that because if you remember, this was, I want to say it was about 2 years ago. They had an episode. I don't remember which one it was, like which show it was, but it was the one where they were basically talking about you're going to be able to launch out scanning drones essentially out to locations, and then once you get info, then you can target that and then jump to it. And that while that aspect by itself is good, and I'd love to see that capability, I'm scared that CIG will tie your quantum jump capability into that. So you won't get blind jump, but you can aim, launch your drone out there, get your information back, and then jump to it. But to me, that's still much too long of a process if you're in a emergency situation. You want to get out, out of the
also, just for exploration's sake, it's just too much of a process. Like, if you're exploring, you just want to be able to go into the random emptiness wherever you want, not...
Yeah. And that's one thing, too, that I think we're seeing a bit too much of in general, and I think CIG need to address at least a little bit, is that yes, we want things to go and be as realistic as is possible while still being fun. At the same point, though, having it to where, like, I need to, every time I take off, I have to do a 15-minute pre-flight check is getting fucking ridiculous. Not, for anyone who doesn't know, no, that's not a thing, but we're damn close to several mechanics to where if I want to go and group up with my friends, you're taking at least 15 to 20 minutes, and that's if they're like at the same station or planet that you're on, to go and get everyone onto the same ship and get it launched. If you're across a single system, and again, we've only got one system right now, which is really small.
It's the second or third smallest system in the game.
Yeah, I mean, you're
even
talking
just
a good
getting
hour.
Across the system, not even trying to go multiple systems, just getting across the system.
Yeah, you're talking a good hour or so.
Yeah.
To go and team up, and that's one system. We have multiple systems. I mean, it's literally going to be hey, we're doing this event in a week. Start moving your characters now. I'm not exaggerating here at all. This is legitimately what we might be facing here. So it's just like, that's something that needs to be addressed.
Well, to your point, Kim, actually, it's the CIG is on record. We're not. This is granted statements they made in the past, and we're not saying that that won't change. There's a good chance it will change, but in the past, they have actually said that they wanted us to go through like startup sequences when we get into our ships, where you're having to look and click on different switches and get different setting readings to make sure that you got green lights on everything, and your status bars are in the zones that they're supposed to be. Like Chris is on record multiple times saying that he wanted that. I personally agree with you that that might be going too far, but I also think, how do I put this? I would be okay with them doing that if there was always a fast track option that you can utilize, that maybe you're not running your ship the most optimally at that exact time, but you jump in and you do a quick start and you take off, and once you're out in space, or you've flown away from your in atmosphere location, maybe you have a chance to sit down and actually go through and make sure that everything's okay, or something to that, an abbreviated step to that. But for those individuals who do want that full sim experience, they have that option to spend all that time doing that if they really want to do it. But there just needs to be that choice. I
agree with the choice. Yeah. I'd say alternatively, maybe you can have like, okay, once you've done it, you can have a essentially a preset, like, okay, this is the thing, and then this way you don't have to press all these buttons every time. You just press one button that automatically does it for you, or something like that, because you've been in this ship before. You've set it all up the way you want it the first time you were in it, so now you don't have to do that every time. It's already keyed to the way you want it.
Yeah.
Whereas, say the ship gets destroyed, then you have to do it again, but you shouldn't have to reset it every time. Like, for instance, right now, obviously when you spawn your ship for the first time, power is going to be distributed equally to everything. Sometimes I like to put most power to shield and weapons versus thrusters, but once I do that, I don't have to keep doing that every time I enter the ship. It's already there unless I change it. Something like that, essentially.
Just note, though, before we go too deep down that rabbit hole, as I was trying to wrap up there, right now, if you go and get in a Gladius, and you go and just hit R to go, because with what we've got right now, you can go and hold your F interaction key and hit, okay, let me go and put power on, let me turn engines on, okay, cool, now I can go and start flying. If you just go and tap R, which is your just ready to ship up, and it will get you to a flight ready status, your character will go in the Gladius and push a couple buttons, turn a couple knobs, and go through all of that. I would anticipate, based on just that aspect, that we would be seeing something similar to where, yeah, if you want to go and tap each button individually, especially once VR is a thing in game and the VR support's there, sure. But if you're just like, hey, I just want to go, you can tap R, your character will do the animations all just boop, 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 ready, go.
Yeah.
So that kind of covers both angles of it. If you want to be like, I am hitting the button individually myself because that's immersive for you, great. And if you're just like, just fucking go, boop, okay, 2 seconds of animations later, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
What do we always say? Options are a gamer's best friend.
Damn right.
So back to the original, I do think that that's something that you're right. CIG needs to be aware of that kind of fine line of where immersion is too much and gameplay is too little. Like there's a fine line, and they need to find exactly where on that line they're going to sit. Are they going to sit on the left of it, to the right of it, or dead center on it? And that we don't know. I think we all have our internal wants and opinions, but it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
Only time will tell, right?
Communication would be awesome.
Yeah. All goes back to CIG just needing to communicate more.
Yep.
And also the community just being a little better on their side of the communication as well. The community has no problem communicating. They just need to be better about how they communicate.
And who's communicating?
Right.
Which ones?
Like a lot of times it's the vocal minority that's specifically into PvP that's now setting standards for how ships are gonna go, and not trying to throw shade at them or anything like that. They should have their
They should have a say, but not the say.
well, I was gonna say they should have their part of the game too and everything like that, yeah, but it shouldn't be setting the standard for everyone, because I would argue most people are in Star Citizen are into PvE rather than PvP. Could be wrong, but I think a majority of the community is.
Well, my issue with a lot of the dialogue that goes on with PvE and PvP and how those both come together into this thing we know as Star Citizen, is that you oftentimes have the PvP crowd saying, we should not be forced into playing PvE, and essentially being forced to play how those other guys want us to play. We should be able to play how we want to play. And it's like, you're right. At least to a certain
forcing
extent,
everyone
absolutely.
else to play the U way.
But on the flip side, though, you're now forcing, when you take that too far, at least, you're forcing everyone else to play how you want to play, doing the exact same things that you were saying you were against. And it's a very fine balance, and it's one hopefully that will be solved by the reputation system and other mechanics future onwards. But it's like no one should be, at least to a certain degree, forced to play in a certain way, at least without there being some amount of heads up of, hey, by the way, bear in mind, the area you're in, this is a very heavy secure zone. If you go and try to do piracy on people, you're probably going to get your fucking ass handed to you. Versus, hey, trader, this is a very lawless zone. If you go and just start putzing about in your mole without any kind of security or thought on anything other than where the next rock is, you might have a bad fucking day here.
Yeah, to use a different example, imagine what the game would be like if all the traders got together and said, we don't like the fact that there's lawless areas and the UAE isn't everywhere to protect us, and we feel that the game should be structured in that way. The
PvPers lose their fucking
like
minds.
that, right? It's so
but it goes the other way too.
Yeah. One of my biggest issues is when I hear the PvPers saying I hear a certain section of the PvPers saying, well, the way that we're behaving now is because CIG isn't providing the gameplay that we want. So that's why we're essentially interfering with other people's gameplay. And when I hear that, I call bullshit.
Well, that's childish. That's saying, I'm not getting what I want. I'm throwing a temper tantrum because of it.
Exactly.
Literally.
And I think if those people could get edited out somehow until later on down the road when the mechanics are there, I think the communication with CIG would be so much better. But I have no idea how to go about doing that correctly.
Now, I will note, too, on that whole dialogue, at least what has been stated previously about PvP. Now, again, this was years ago. Obviously, this all could have changed because a lot of mechanics have changed in the interim. But according to Chris Roberts himself, and I will apologize ahead of time, I don't have video links of this. Assume I have no source other than I'm talking out my ass for the one guy who wants a source, Senator Armstrong. But according to CIG, or according to Chris Roberts himself, Star Citizen is not a PvP focused or PvPvE game. It is a game where you can do PvP, but that is not the focus.
Yep.
That is not their intention. And again, this was years ago. This could have changed. They might have gone in a completely different direction internally and just haven't really communicated it just plainly. Hey guys, we're in a new direction now. This is what the new standard, the new direction is. That's entirely possible, but at least as it was years ago, that was the intention, is that it's a game where you can do PvP, but the game is not oriented toward PvP.
To back you up, Chris Roberts is on record, and again, same thing, not saying that the opinion hasn't changed or will change, but back in the day, Chris floated the idea. He said, this is something that we're thinking about. Not that they're going to do it, but, you know, he's saying, this is an idea that I've got that we might go this route, which is if you were, you know, that PvPer that was starting to become a problem child, you might find yourself shunted off into a server with those other PvP problem childs, and you would find yourself, you know, the more you play that way, the more that you would be shunted into a group of like-minded people and away from all the rest of the players in the game who aren't behaving that way. So, I mean, to me, that sends that shows a clear mindset of how he wants the game to be, which is, like you said, not PvP centric. PvP is there, you can do it, but if you do it too much or you do it in a way that is causing problems for other players, then you're going to get, you know, shafted off into a side branch. So, I mean,
you also have,
I think you're right.
It's also, this is where a lot of the Arena Commander and Star Marine modules would play into the game if they were more stable and functional as well. Like, I know saying, like, oh, go play Arena Commander or Star Marine for that is kind of a cheat, but at the same time, that's their whole purpose.
But you can't make money that way. Or I'm not saying you can't make money, but to make sizable quantities, in other words, a career off that, you would need to adjust that. There would need to be a way to make a career based off of playing in Star Marine or, you know, Theaters of War or something like that. If you wanted to draw the PvPers, because if you can't make a career out of it, in other words, make money off it, they're going to go out into the real, you know, the real world, air quotes around that, the PU, and, you know, go try and make money.
No, that's a fair point. No, that's a very fair point. That it's like, and my opinion is that there should be a way to play and generally earn money, no matter how you want to play. Whether that is, yes, hey, I am purely a trader. That's all I want to do. I want to play Space Truck Simulator here. That's fucking it. And whether you're talking about a literal ground vehicle or a spaceship, sure. You know, if that's what you want to do, there should be a way to earn a decent amount of money out there. Meanwhile, if you're like, hey, I'm just in it for the combat. I want to just jump from fight to fight to fight to fight. That's all I want to do all day, every day. Sure. And you might be attacking cargo convoys. You might be protecting them. You might be doing other events. You might be doing, you know, maybe an Arena Commander or Star Marine or Theaters of War. Maybe there will be in-game monetary rewards for doing that. That, hey, you know, you play this match, you do X things, you get money for it somehow, whatever.
Yeah. And
if you're like, I'm a murder hobo, I literally just want to fucking kill every single goddamn fucking moving thing out there. Kill. If that's your mindset, sure, there should be a way to earn money off of there. Not to say there won't be challenges on any of these paths. Some may be more so than others, but there should absolutely be a way to do it. I do like though the earlier note of like, oh hey, if you become a problem child, so to speak, to the point that the moderators take notice,
Yeah, air quotes
you might
around
be
problem
shunted
child.
off to like a server just with other problem childs. On that note, it would be kind of interesting, I would say, if there was some kind of background logic going to where, hey, I'm mostly a cargo trader, and the game sees, hey, you out of like let's say it's like you've got each of the different proficiencies or job types out there. So you've got like trader,
Career path.
hauler, bounty hunter, criminal, whatever, each of those out there, and it kind of goes and says, okay, here's like percentage wise for your character, here's where you're at. Whether you're an all-rounder, I kind of do everything equally. I'm primarily doing cargo trading, or I'm primarily doing piracy or bounty hunting or whatever. And then the game kind of goes, hey, we're going to try to balance out the servers here. So you're going to have 40% cargo traders, 10% pirates, 10% bounty hunters, 15% miners, etc. If there was this kind of ideal balance it works towards, so that you don't have, so if you are a PvP or you're just like, this is all I do all day, every day, you wouldn't necessarily find yourself just in a server where everyone else wants to be a PvPer, not necessarily. Or if you're a cargo trader, you're not going to find yourself only with other cargo traders, but there would be this kind of somewhat of a mix to where, hey, we're going to keep things interesting. Yeah, you've got a couple of criminal elements here. If you're just sitting there fucking just going from one rock to another in a very lawless zone, you might go and have some trouble here. Versus, and that might depend too, each system would have a different balance. If we're in the Stanton system, and this is a very, very highly secure area, sure, the level of pirates that are coming in, unless a group specifically teams up and goes, we are going here to do the thing, which, and it's like, any group could do that kind of thing. Sure, absolutely. But ideally, you would have just, you've got a very low criminal population here and a very high security population here comparatively to the norm. Versus out in lawless space, that would be the complete opposite. Your bounty hunters and security forces would be very low because they're getting their fucking asses handed to them. Why am I going to go out here and cause trouble unless I'm traveling in a huge group with a specific intended cause? I'm not going to just go and putz over there. So something like that might help to kind of balance all of that out.
I agree with the idea. I just, the only thing that pops into mind immediately is how much background mechanics that would take. Not mechanics per se, but
background logic.
The curating of those percentages, and for each player, and I'm not saying it is too much. I'm wondering like how much background computing power that takes to maintain that system. But I like the idea. But going back to the problem childs, I would be okay with having problem childs, and I'm using problem childs in a very broad term because I don't know all the different specifics, and everyone's got a different opinion. So I'm just broad term. Let's agree that that's just kind of a ballpark term. I don't know all the a problem child. I think I'd be okay with a problem child getting moved into servers that have other players that are like them, but maybe have a consistent, not consistent, but a regular check. And if that individual maybe isn't doing as much of the problem child behaviors, once they realize that they're in that group, then after a certain amount of time, i.e. like reputation or something, maybe they're allowed to come back into the general population game pool, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think I think having something like that would definitely be good to where, hey, I'm a murder hobo to the point of I am actively causing issues in the game balance. Everywhere I go, I'm disrupting gameplay. I am causing problems, at least in terms, even if you aren't necessarily abusing the system, but just your very presence is disruptive to general gameplay on the server. You get shunted off, and hey, all of a sudden you're with all the people who are constantly spewing all kinds of bullshit in the chat and generally being somewhat toxic players until you kind of go, hey, whoa, maybe I don't want to hang out with this crowd here. You kind of tone it down a bit, and okay, hey, now you're kind of, and it would be maybe kind of a gradual thing to where you've got, let's say if there's like a scale 0 to 10, and 10 being like, this is the absolute farthest you can go without us outright going like banning you or kicking your account or something along those lines. 0 being, you're not even on the fucking radar of being a problem at all. And it's like, okay, I'm at like a 3. Okay, now you're starting to kind of, you're noticing more of this kind of stuff, and you're kind of like, oh, hey, that's kind of weird. You keep going, you keep doing what you do when you're at like a 6. It's like, whoa, okay, like what happened to all the fucking traders? Like, the only traders I'm encountering are the ones that will fucking just shoot me as soon as I show my, like, I'm literally just cruising from A to B, and as soon as I cross their path, they just blew me out of the fucking sky because they're so tight on the trigger finger here, et cetera, until you're like, maybe I need to chill a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it would be interesting.
I also just think, like, a lot of people look at Star Citizen in general and it's like, it's all about the ships. It's like, yes, currently, because that's all we really have in regards to, like, what's the big thing to do? You need a ship to do everything, right? But looking at the big picture, at the end of the day, and we talked about this in the past, your ships aren't going to be the main thing. The main thing's going to be you, your character, and where you are, what you're doing, rather than what ship you have and what ship it can do, and what things it can do. Look, that's the difference between Star Citizen and all the other space games, is that, yes, ships are important, but you don't necessarily need one. Now you do, yes, because it's the alpha, but at the end of the day, when the shuttling and all the AI stuff's in, if you never want to fly a ship, ever, you never have to.
Yeah,
or
potentially
you should be able to play like that.
You'll have AI shuttling and star lines to take you places instead of having to rely on your own flight capabilities, stuff like that. And I like that. That gives you the option of gameplay, and it broadens the amount of people that could play this game. Because not everyone wants to be a pilot or can fly, right? So this way now you have the ability to play this game without being forced into specific gameplay features and mechanics.
And how you play the game.
Or how you play the game, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It's like, for instance, this is the problem I have with, like, this is going to be completely different, and probably people are going to yell at me for using this comparison, but...
Damn it, man, no.
In the games, like, you have Batman, the Arkham series of Batman games, and then you have the new Spider-Man game, right? The one that just came to PC in August. Still haven't played it on PC, but I played it on PS4 a few years ago. And the Spider-Man game forces you to use the gadgets and stuff, which I don't like, because I want to try and play with minimal gadget use. Right? Just being able to use whatever skills I've accumulated in the game. But the game doesn't like that, and forces you to use the gadgets in order to really get ahead. The Batman games don't do that. You can pretty much make it throughout the entire game just by punching your way.
Well, I will note, you do have to generally.
Yeah, but those are mostly scripted segments and puzzles.
Yeah, well, yeah, at least for bosses and for some traversal kinds of things, you'll need to use them. Besides that, yes.
But the point being is, it's a more free. Like, the two games themselves are very, very similar to each other, because one is very clearly trying to copy the other in some capacity. But one is gives you more freedom in how you go about it and how you can combine the gadgets and stuff like that, whereas the other one is just forcing you to use them, and it doesn't feel right.
Well, I mean, we've said in the past, what we think sandbox should mean is, hey, here's a bunch of different mechanics. Now go figure out what you want to do with those mechanics versus normal games which are on rails, which
Pretty
is
much.
like, you've only got 3 things that you can put in your inventory and they only do one thing each, and that's all you can do.
Yeah. The problem is also.
Excuse you, this thing does 1.5 things?
That's with a mod.
Yes.
Right. But yeah, the whole thing with Star Citizen, you can do right. Like the scope of the game at the end of the day is going to be very, very massive. Yeah, we only have mining. We're about to get salvage 318, whether that's in December or February, anywhere in between.
Fire.
Or anywhere in between.
Yeah.
I do hope it's in sometime in like late January, February though, just for stability's sake, and also so you're not left with a broken patch for a month.
A month? 3, come on.
Right, sorry. But you know what I mean. Like we talked about this last week. Last week we really went in depth on a lot of things. If you're watching this, and if it's the first time, whatever, I do recommend watching episode 85. We did talk about a lot of good stuff there. But in the event of just sandbox that Star Citizen offers, I remember a few months ago we talked about the investigation missions that they were talking about at CitizenCon, and how we went on this whole thing like, if they play their cards right, they can have investigation missions be where you can essentially become like the local PI of whatever city you're at and do all these types of missions without ever having to leave this location. Or minimally.
Well, remember, Chris Roberts is on record, again, not saying it hasn't changed or will change, but he's on record that his initial idea was that a player could essentially play the game without ever leaving essentially the planet or the moon that they are on.
The major landing city, the city that they're on. Essentially, if I remember correctly, he was more specifically saying you can experience, if not essentially most, if not all, the gameplay loops in one planet, essentially, if not one city.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to be limited. But something along those lines, yeah.
Well, basically what he was saying is, like, his expectation of a player's gameplay would essentially be what you said. The player would be fully engaged just playing on the planetary surface and the space station around that planetary surface. So he was talking about, like, if you're over at ArcCorp, you might play for hours or weeks without ever actually leaving the ArcCorp system. Like, yeah, you might go out to a moon or you might go up to the station, but essentially you would be getting all your gameplay loops just in that local planetary area. And then a few players would actually be, going out to other planetary systems. So like jumping over to Crusader, or jumping out to not Orcorp, I can't think of the name right now. But anyways, like that was his initial game development idea, was that yes, you would have this vast travel capability, but most players wouldn't need to do that unless they were into the space trucking thing, because there would be gameplay that would be in depth enough for them to basically stay in their local area and enjoy the game.
Yeah. And I like that too, because it means it gives you that option of, you can go become this interstellar whatever, right? I say whatever because, bounty hunter, cargo, space trucker, whatever the hell you want to be. But you can also be like the more local guy, right? You can be like that, ArcCorp Colombo guy, or something.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much potential for this game. And granted, we're talking long term, but years and years away. But if they continue to develop in every branch direction possible, I mean, there's just so much gameplay that could be in this game, and it'd all be, side by side. Player one, the guy next to you in the elevator after you spawn might be going off to do all those PI local missions, and you're the space trucker who's going to go jump 3 systems today. Like, it's all there. I think it's great.
Yeah. Again, just that
But
option.
on that note,
The level of
Sorry.
options.
No, I was
it's
just
that
gonna
the
throw
level
a-
of options. But yeah,
Yep.
I think we are kind of running out of hot air to use here for
What do you mean? I can ramble on all day. Okay, so okay.
we're running out of rabbit holes. Make one up. I think our route has been concluded. We have navigated through all the rabbit holes, and journey has come to an end. So, it's gonna be it for this week, right?
sounds good.
Hopefully, same bet time, same bet channel next week, Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about whatever the hell's happening this week in Star Citizen. What is happening this week in Star Citizen? Aside from Inside Star Citizen on Thursday and Star Citizen Live on Friday. Is there anything?
Not much that I know of.
Did they ever end up doing that 3.18 patch watch this Wednesday or this past Wednesday? They were supposed to do that Wednesday, but I don't remember hearing or seeing anything.
Yeah, I didn't hear or see anything, so I don't.
So hopefully we get that this week, but I'm not betting on it.
Yeah.
I think it's probably going to be like a slow couple of weeks leading up to the holidays, at least until we hear or see something relating to 318.
Yep.
Just before we head off, I am just double checking the leak server just to see what else is coming up right now with this week. We did get a sneak peek this week on the or last week rather, on the Pyro Station market, but it's just a screenshot of the marketplace. Let's see, this week in Star Citizen, blah blah blah, Monday. Lore post short story Hazy Days on Tuesday. Wednesday is going to be a roadmap update and RSI Galaxy Q&A. Okay. Cam. Thursday is Luminalia kickoff. So we'll probably be seeing the Luminalia gifts in game, and hopefully there are 1,000 creds to pop this time. Again.
Yeah, we'll see.
They're probably not going to be, but
Probably. We've actually rebalanced them. They're now worth 50 credits each.
I believe they reduced it to 500 last year, right? I'm just trying to remember. It was 500 last year, right? Because it used to be 1,000, and then it was 500 last year. Hopefully they boosted back up, but either way, Luminalia is kicking off on Thursday, which means that you'll find these green little presents with red bows on them that you can pick up all over Grimhacks and all the major landing zones, and you can sell them like minables at trading kiosks and make a profit just by picking them up, which is great. It means that you can find all this money that you can dispose of on ships before they do a patch wipe, depending on when it comes out. But yeah, also there's going to be a subscriber vault update on Friday for subscribers up.
That's what they want you to think.
So far, that's about it for the Star Citizen this week. So, call it and say thanks for watching.
Good show, guys. See you next week.